Hey, welcome back to the Bohemian Wellcast. Today, you are going to be a witness to a conversation between myself and one of my faves, Junauda Petrus. I love Junauda Petrus. If you don't know Junauda, then Google her. Go get some information. But Junauda is the queen of all things dreams, magic, sweetness, and love, and generosity, and openness. She's the queen of all that. And so today, I'm going to be having a conversation with her about how she has become comfortable with those things. Today's conversation is a reflection of one of the characters in Center Play, and that character's name is Vega Gray. And Vega Gray has some really vivid, intense dreams and tries to hide them from her family because she becomes capable of things that her family isn't really aware of. And that's a scary thing for her. And so that's a part of what our conversation is about today. It's like having these gifts or discovering spiritual abilities outside of the realm of Christianity and how that it can be taboo, it can be scary. My experience with discovering my dreams or spiritual gifts has been framed by my experience in Christianity. And so our conversation is really about not coming to it through Christianity and how to deal with that and how to handle it and identifying ways in which we've learned a lot of things about ourselves and our spiritual gifts. So sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the Bohemian Way Wellcast. My name is the Boheme. I am the artistic and executive director of Bohemian Way, and I am here joined by Junauda Petrus. We're going to be talking about Center Play. Specifically, we're going to talk about Vega Gray, one of the characters from the film. Check us out.
Hey, I wanted to get a sense from you. What was the inspiration behind the conception of this character, Vega?
So for me, I was just driven to talk about dreams from when Center Play started as a stage play before it even turned into a short film. I just know I had a lot of really strong experiences with my dreams that really helped me in my everyday life, which wasn't really something that I was taught growing up. Of like, how can my dreams be useful to my everyday life? Also learning about my intuition, like the dreams and intuition go hand in hand for me. And I wanted to share that in a way to help other people realize that they can actually learn from their dreams and trust them. So from the stage play, which this particular dream doesn't come up here, the pieces evolved a lot since 2018 when it started out. But the original dream that I was talking about was this dream I had. And the way dreams happen, things just appear. They just come into your awareness that they're there. But I saw this structure, this huge structure. And the more I looked at it, I came to understand that it was an apartment building. Or like a single apartment unit, living unit. And then the more I looked at it, I realized that it was on a pole, which was like a very unstable thing for it to be on.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's crazy. And the more that I looked at it, I looked down and it was in water. And I was like, well, that's even worse. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, man, this isn't safe. This isn't sound. This isn't wise. So let me just get rid of it to keep someone else safe. Maybe to keep myself safe. I don't need to be living in it. And based on what was going on in my life at the moment, I was in the process of deciding something that I needed to give a yes or no answer. And that was the dream that I had. And the next day I was like, I have to say no. Mm-hmm. I have to close this door because apparently maybe it's not the best decision. I wanted to create something to help people understand that your dreams can be useful. You know, they're not just, some people feel that their dreams are pointless. I'm not one of those people. So that's what inspired me to create Vega's story.
Right on.
Yeah. And that particular story isn't what I talk about in Vega's story, but that's what helped bring that to life.
No, but that makes sense though.
Yeah. And so it makes me want to ask you about your dreams, or how have dreams impacted your life and your creative practice?
I think dreaming happens in so many dimensions. Like people are like, oh, stop daydreaming. And I think I definitely was a daydreamer. I'm still a daydreamer. I feel like even in the context of people I know, I dream a lot during the day. And I definitely have a dream life that at night has, but it shifts. Like I feel like I was just out of town in this kind of like place out in the wilderness, this yoga and meditation center. And I had a lot of vivid dreams. One of the reoccurring dreams I have, there's a couple reoccurring dreams as far as, I don't know, sleeping dreams. Like maybe we can discern between day and sleep dreams, but where I often have a dream where I'm seeing a plane crash out of the sky. That's like a reoccurring dream where it's like, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, look at the plane take off. Okay, now it's burning and crashing to the ground. And it's a thing where, yeah, I think like dreams like hold symbolism. Like when I wake up from dreams like that, of course, I'm like, oh my God. But a lot of it, what I've come to understand from the years around that dream is that, yeah, there's something that I really want to have happen that I'm afraid, will it happen or not happen? Or will something fall apart, whatnot? I think dreams are fascinating because they're like this very personal, intimate, cinematic experience of your psyche talking back to you in ways that you can't plan. Like you can have a dream fucking somebody you didn't even think was attractive, and all of a sudden you're like, what the fuck was that fuck about? Like I think, and I don't know, maybe I can't curse.
Yes, you can.
But to me, it's I had a reoccurring dream where there's this certain friend of mine I was always trying to hook up with this dream. And it was a person I was attracted to in real life. So at first I thought, oh, is it because I'm attracted to them? But over the years, I was like, what they symbolize to me is...
Boom.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry, that's 100% what it is for me.
Yeah.
It's not who they are, it's what they represent.
What they represent. And for this one friend, he's just very confident in his existence. He's very connected to his ancestors. And I just was like, oh, like there's a part of me that is interested in aligning with that part of myself. So I think I've been very curious over the years about how dreams could be used as tool to be like, oh, this is what's going down in the sort of layers of myself that maybe I'm not ready to have conscious conversations with myself.
Yep.
But definitely a daydreamer. Like I think a lot of my art practice comes from the fact that I'm like, wouldn't this be cool? I want to feel that feeling. I think that's the thing that's always as a kid was like, oh, you're dreamy and looking here and looking there. But I think it's really like my nourishment of my existence for sure.
Yeah, I would say I'm hoping to... The Center Play film is really just a taste of what I'm hoping to be able to say further through the play. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to get at, is that Vega, I wanted to be able to tell a story with which we can tell she already has some sort of relationship to her dream life, but that she's gotten to a point where something's happening she doesn't understand. So that's actually what will be my next question for you. Have you had, whether they be dream experiences or spiritual energy experiences or gifts that have presented to you that have had you in a space of, I don't know what's happening and I don't know who to talk to, I don't know if I'm normal. Have you had experiences like that? I 100% have, but I'm curious, have you?
Yeah, I feel like it's a thing I've been actually reflecting on lately. It's like I've always felt like an outsider, I've always felt different. Like I think I've been a person that, yeah, I think as a kid, I just felt like an outsider. And I feel that way within my family often. And I always was so sad about it. Like I just wanted to fit in very much. And so I think like a part of recently in my life, I've been like, oh, actually my weirdness is cool. As a kid, for example, I was thinking about actually, because I've started to go to therapy in the last year, and it's been great, like doing actual like childhood trauma stuff. And as a kid, when things would get hard, I would talk to different dead people. Like I would talk to my aunt who passed away when I was 9, who was like so beautiful, and like somebody I loved a lot. She died young. And then I fell in love with this jazz musician, Dizzy Gillespie, who was just like, he died recently, and I'd gotten into his music because I was in jazz band. And when things were really stressful with my family, I would talk to them. And I was always teased by my family and by people in families. They're like, oh, they think it's, and I do think some of the teasing wasn't like, well, he was Trump, man, blah, blah, blah. But some of it really was, oh, like that reminded me I'm different. But as I've gotten older and there's a Junauda that's 41 that can be with a Junauda that's 9 years old, oh, if I were around and there was a kid like that in my family, like how would I have showed up for them? And also seeing those gestures as my early ancestral worship and like veneration. Being like, oh, it's not just me being a weird kid that can't act the way my family wants me to act. It's me actually being in alignment with something. So yeah, so I do feel like a lot of my art practice has come from the ways that I've been able to capture my outsider weird kind of feelings and allow it to be the first step of creative explorations for me to be like, oh, this is what I wanted to feel. This is what I wanted to see. This is what I'm here to share with people. So
I'm like tearing up. I'm so inspired. How I relate to what you're saying. I remember when I was in the second grade, I was in the lunchroom. And this is like elementary school lunchroom. So it's really the gym. And they have brought out the lunch tables with the little circle. Like they put the table down or they like came down like this and they had all the little circle chairs. And so I remember it was breakfast. I just got to school. I had my coat, my backpack, and my lunchbox. And I remember looking around the lunchroom and the colors in the space were so vivid, the edges of my eyesight were buzzing. And I remember my eyes being really wide and feeling really exposed and weird, like just being stunned and very afraid of, I know I look weird. Is somebody gonna notice that I look weird right now? Why does my eyesight look like this? Why? And I never told anybody about it. I just felt it and was just like, okay. And so as I think back now to what I would say or what I imagine that was I was experiencing was everybody has an energy bubble. And I think like the tighter your energy bubble is to you, the less vibrations you vibrate out and the less vibrations come into you. But I think that the more relaxed and comfortable you get, your kinesphere kind of relaxes and vibrations are allowed to enter and exit that space. And I think that that is actually one of my gifts I know now that I utilize in my singing. It's something I use when I'm on stage all the time is engage with the edges of energy. And I think that at that time, at that age, I was just having a surge of it. Like it just was a surge of energy my little body couldn't control. I think it's something that I'm learning with watching center play and watching through the characters that everything I'm saying is very internal, mentally self-reflective. I think has been a lot of, I've gone through a lot alone in my own little private space. Creating this is me finally letting some of that out. But like I'm letting it out, but it seems to hit people as a very internal expression still.
I think so many times with artistry, we've always been creative. We've always been in the flow of whatever that energy is for us. And I think it typically is a thing because so many of us are raised by people who have been given a lot of things to fear when it comes to expressing and being connected to spirit. So I think like even you at that age had a sense like I'm experiencing this experience, but I can't talk to anybody about it. Is also just how we're taught to feel that anything that doesn't fit into what is normal, which nobody's normal, but we really learn how to police our existence and be like, okay, that's weird. Let me not pull attention to this thing that might make me even more less a part of the tribe.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I remember when I was in middle school, one of my teachers in my parent teacher wrote that I was a very loquacious child, very talkative. You're making me aware that I was very vocal in some ways, but there was a lot that I wasn't saying too at the same time. That makes me curious to reflect on.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the most like important work I've done as an artist has been in reconnecting to my young self and my impulses as a kid, because I think that's when I was the most vibrantly creative. I'd be like, here, I'm making this collage, like I'm working on a dance, it's a song. It was always some way I was trying to channel my existence into the world via creation. And oftentimes it's like our parents or the people around us, they had their natural creative impulses shamed or beaten or whatever out of them. So I do feel like I have to go back and poke my creativity in sort of the ways that was so naturally, comfortably an artist. I wasn't judgmental of my existence. Like I just wanted to share my existence. So I do think like all artists, I'm like, yeah, go find those younger parts of yourself that really were your initial embrace of your creative gift.
Yeah. Through what lens, medium, or belief did your family teach you about dreams or spirituality?
Oh, it's interesting because when you initially had brought up some of these questions, I thought of my grandmother, Pearl, which I have a tattoo for her here. She used to have the same tattoo. She had a heart with her initials in it, so that's what I got there. Honoring her, because I feel like for her, dreams were very much, she had a dream at a young age that she looked up into the sky and glasses fell down onto her face. And she took that for the rest of her life to mean that she would get messages through her dreams. And it's a thing that I think, like, even in my young adult book, like, I reference sort of the dreamscape as a portal towards uncovering yourself and reflecting on things. So to me, like, my grandmother was extremely religious, very West Indian woman of her generation, born in the 30s, not like having a lot of access to dream and living space. And the day-to-day, she was a young woman, then a young mother, a wife, a partner. She had a lot of kids, but she also had a very, like, when I think of how I am spiritually, you know how there's some people who just love the Lord? Like, they could just be with their
Sounds like
Lord.
my grandma.
And it took to me to get older to be like, okay, for me, it's not Jesus or the Lord in that way, but there is a part of me that I just love being with spirit. I love being with my ancestors. I just love vibing in my vibes. Like, it's just some shit for me. Like, I've dated people who, like, that's not their thing. But for me, it's like, oh, I just need to be like dancing. And my sort of honoring is different than my grandmother's, but I feel like a lot of her spiritual kind of alignment is influenced by the African ancestry and Caribbean ancestry, even if how she expressed it was very Christian. Mm-hmm. She grew up with a lot of mystic folk religion, which a lot of people end up repressing, like you're talking about. I think you had mentioned that you were raised religiously. So there's so much witchy shit that my grandma got into as a young person within these realms. Like, they literally would do rituals where people would astral travel. She would describe these ceremonies and stuff. And I think with a lot of these, our elders and ancestors, like, they lived in a time where a lot of these traditional ancestral folk religions were still very much intersected with any Christianity, if Christianity wasn't used as an almost mask for what people were doing. So I think what's interesting about my iteration is that, like, definitely dreams have always been seen as something that, like, whenever she would have a dream, she would talk about her dream. That was her way of connecting with God.
She would share it with you, or like
she would share dreams with anybody who would listen. That was just her thing. Is once she had a dream about it, it was very important. Yeah. Anyways, I just think about that in the sense of, I think some of those spiritual ways that we do things feel so, oh, why do I feel like I need to do this? How come this feels like an important ritual for me to do? And when we are quiet with ourselves, honestly, ancestors whispering to us, whether it's through our dreams or through impulses and intuitive things that we do that we can't explain.
Yes, right. It did. Yes, it did. The question was about, like, where did anything about dreams and spirituality, where did it come from did your family teach you through a certain modality, or they teach you things about it? They deter you from it?
I wasn't raised religiously, but my parents were. And they came up in, like, the 70s in the Caribbean, when it was a lot of, I think, what was happening all over America, whether it was in Detroit or what have you. People weren't looking only to Christianity to be in spiritual communion. Like, people were doing Rastafarianism, people were doing Kemetic or Yoruba spirituality. And my parents were more so hippie sort of seekers within the lineage of kind of Caribbean reflections. Yeah, it's very interesting just at this point in my life, unpacking some of that stuff and thinking, like, how do I continue on that journey of, okay, there's certain things that I actually got to experience from my ancestors and elders, and some are things that I'm remembering intuitively.
Yeah, I had one of the more recent things that was an impulse that I don't know where it came from, but I did a musical a couple months ago. It was a really intense experience. And I went back to Detroit to spend some time with my parents, and I couldn't function until I completely cleaned the bathroom for some reason. I had to get on my hands and knees and scrub the floor. And but there was something about, I couldn't move on until I did this ritual of cleansing the bathroom and organizing it. There was something
unsettled in me until that was done. And then when it was done, I got to breathe and I could move on. I don't know, my mom or they didn't teach me that, that not in that context.
Yeah, but no, that's exactly it. I think there's a lot of things where, because so many of us were cut off from ritual, like there's so many, every spiritual, any cultural indigenous person, no matter who you are, honestly, you have that in your blood. You have these things. And sometimes I think like I used to be like, oh, I need to go study this thing. But what I've been more interested lately is like, how do I study myself and how these things come through, like your naming, because spirit does talk to you in those things. I'm like, I wish the spirit would talk to me about cleaning the bathroom and doing certain things.
Never happened before.
What I can know is unique is that I know where I was at emotionally. I know what was on me that feels clear to me that this was the solution to that emotional space. And that's something I didn't think about or plan.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. Actually, when I was in St. Croix, that's where my dad's side of the family is from. I was there with some friends and we all happened to bring shrooms, as you do. But I really wanted to shroom on my ancestral land because I've shroomed here in Dakota and Junauda land. I've shroomed in New York and I've shroomed in Amsterdam. Just so y'all know, every interview with me is going to end up in a shroom story. Because it's been the place that I've been in a living dream space that feels very like, oh my God, particular this topic. But I remember being like, all right, I just want to like what had happened was, I was like, I want to shroom on my ancestral land. But what ended up happening is that the place me and my friends were staying at, she recommended like, oh, there's this estate not too far away from here that's beautiful. It's got this beautiful gardens. Me and my friends go to this estate and it's a plantation. Estate, of course, is a plantation, but because so much of the Caribbean is kind of rebranded as like paradise. And we're here, so these people are thinking that telling 3 Black, brown people that this beautiful estate is a place they should walk around. You should let us know it's a plantation, lady. Either way, we was there, we had the shrooms, it was going in. But the thing about the psychedelic experience for me is I know that once I channel what my journey is gonna be, like I was like, I'm just gonna sit up in here and I just wanna talk to my ancestors. And they really started talking to me and filling my body and talking to me through my body. And it's a thing where I'm like, wow, the experience was extraordinarily transformative, like truly, because being anybody from a migratory lineage, which a lot of Black people are, whether it's Caribbean migratory or Southern Black migratory, whatever it is, like when you have to migrate. And I feel like you talk a lot about Bohemianism. I think there's an inherent Bohemianism in Black having to survive existence. That's part of our migratory explorations. For me, going there and listening to the women in my lineage who are in that land and not seeing them as like these kind of collapsed, ancestors just in the fields, just doing, we're always taught to think of our ancestors as like the work they did and not the embodiment that they navigated. And for me, like that ritual that like comes from my own exploration of, okay, how do I use psychedelic medicine to go within? And then actually pulling in my ancestors to be like, all right, y'all gonna take these psychedelics with me and we gonna be talking, we gonna be feeling each other. And it's a thing that there's other Black people who are doing that kind of work. Like, how do you get into these ancestral realms using these plant medicines that so much of plant medicine has been used to criminalize us and stigmatize us. So anyway, I'm sure there was a question answered in that story.
Yes, there was. You answered so many. So many.
But these rituals that are like, oh, okay, cool. I know I needed that ritual with my family.
Yeah. Rituals. Yeah, I think that what is ritual, but also channeling things, that those are the 2 things that I'm hearing that are vibrating for me in what you're saying. I guess I'm inspired by Vega being told by her family to paint whenever she's been dreaming a lot. And it makes me ask you, or
Okay, so you discovered that this ritual is something you need. What do you do with that information? Did somebody help you understand how you can use it or where to put it? Or is that something that you felt into as well?
I really feel like writing. Like I think about actually back to the ancestor veneration I had as a kid when my aunt died. She was 29 and I was 9, my mom's younger sister. And I remember writing her a letter that I put in her casket. And I also had my whole picture that I put in there. My grandmother was like, don't put your picture in the casket, just the letter. And now as an adult, and my daughter is almost 9, she's 8.5. And I was like, what was my little ass sitting there writing a letter to my ancestor? Like the fact that I sent that, was putting that into her casket with her. Yeah, like that to me is like also part of these conversations about, okay, like how did I know it? Did you say the question again, just so I could stay on?
Through what lens, medium, or belief did your family teach you about dreams or spirituality?
Oh, is that? I thought we had a different question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What we were. I'm sorry. This was the last question, but we trailed off into rituals and.
Oh, how did my art? Because you said it big.
Yeah,
with
channeling
my
it.
family.
Sorry. My
Yeah.
bad.
No, my bad. Because I was just like, okay, I want to respond to the question. Yeah, I feel like writing was definitely a thing where I was like, yo, it was my therapy. Like, it's a thing I often will talk to children.
Just pull it back.
Oh, yeah. Like, the kids I interact with who read my book or whatever about how writing was my therapy. Like, now I can afford a therapist. But as a kid, it was definitely like, oh, like, this thing is happening. My parents are doing this. And I think just writing so much and reading a lot.
Did anybody tell you to do that, or you found it on your own?
I found them out. I feel like, yeah, nobody told me to write. Yeah. It was always a thing
It's
that
the
I
look
was
on your
like,
face for me.
Yeah.
Nobody told me to do that. No.
No.
I feel
But-
like I found writing too. Writing,
Yeah.
journaling came to me at a young age. I have poems. I have so much stuff I've saved. If I like when I'm at home, all these
Yeah.
poems. I was writing these angsty poems to get my feelings out. But I didn't have it didn't take on such a self-reflective space though until I got to college. Until I was like in spaces where I don't know, the stakes got higher for me for some reason around my need to understand and process what I was feeling. Yeah. Not that I didn't need it before. I think I was more expressive when I was younger, but then when I got to college, the lens turned a little more internal, psychoanalyzing, or not psychoanalyzing, but just very neurotic about what was happening. Like that was like a shift that happened.
Happens in your 20s.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah.
I don't miss it. I wouldn't do it again.
It's so real.
So can you tell me what has been a highlight or personally powerful moment of truth you discovered on your spirit dream journey?
The most recent one is that I am okay. I am okay. I think I have so much judgment of myself and so much shame around my existence. Like I really had, and it's interesting because I think like part of that is as a kid, like I just always felt I was doing something wrong, that there's something just wrong with me. It's been interesting because I have been just doing a lot of work, just my spiritual work, my therapy work, my creative work, that has just allowed me to be with myself in a way to heal some of those wounds of my existence or I don't know, my therapist talks about, what do they call it? Something like some of these foundational beliefs around yourself that I think artists are particularly vulnerable. I shouldn't say that because I think everybody can be very sensitive in their own way.
You said wounds of my existence? Is that what you said?
I don't remember what I said, but maybe.
That one was lingering. That one hit me in my chest. Wounds of my existence.
Yeah, because I think as a kid, I grew up with my parents come from a generation of Caribbean folks who parents left to go find a place to be in New York or Toronto or England or whatever. So a lot of people weren't raised by parents. They were raised by the relatives that were left in the islands. So like my parents' approach to raising me was like very gruff. And they were also artists. Like my parents are both very extremely creative people. But I think, yeah, I do feel like there's a lot of wounds I like karmically held from all of the artistry that didn't get to be explored. I really do feel like mine existence right now is like, oh, I get to be the things my ancestors couldn't be. Like I get to explore parts of myself, whether it's my queerness or my creativity or just like being a hoochie mama. Like I think about my grandmothers, both of them were both like, I think, shamed around their sexuality. Like my grandmothers, both of them were young mothers. Both of them had loves and loves affairs that were shamed about them. I think that's a thing that's very actually consistent with like Black femmes. It's, oh, you love your sexuality, you love your pleasure, and we are mad at you about it. And you should feel bad about that stuff. So just even like being in conversations with my wife about being poly and being like, oh yeah, like this is a conversation I can have about I'm in love with you. And also too, my spirit is curious about how love exists in me as just me, as well as me and other people. And it's such a like scary conversation sometimes because I'm so used to this. Close your legs. Yeah, listen here. If you know what I mean? It's just like all of this sort of dialogue, but like just being like, oh, I get to be a hoochie mama in my grandmother's names and let them feel themselves in ways that like, because also I come from, and I think this is a lot of culture, like where men can be explorative in their sexuality and layered in their sexuality. And it's, oh, that's them being them, but you close your legs and like just transmuting this energy in my life where it's like, oh, we all get to be collective Fugees together and love ourselves and be very, just like arrive in my body with them in their bodies. Like, I really feel like that's been my energy lately.
So you're tapping onto something else that I actually said I talked about in another conversation around another character where I was tapping into rage, Graciela. And so part of the poetry that I wrote for that and part of a challenge that I experienced is with regard to that, sometimes I feel like the rage that I felt in my body is a very visceral experience for me. Mm-hmm. And even what I explain in the poetry is what it feels like for me when I have rage surging in my body. When I come to a certain emotional space, it feels like it vibrates my bones and my blood is boiling. My skin is so hot to the touch. That too. You right about that.
My wife moves in Aries, and I'm like, she's like strong, and then it's just gone. But now I'm mad. Oh, now I'm in my feelings. But go ahead.
No, it's like that's actually a good insight too. Of like I do have a lot of fire, but sometimes I feel like the level of rage that I feel don't even make sense for the life that I'm living in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. Like that it is, and I feel a lot of things about that. I feel like I haven't earned this rage in this lifetime. Mm. I feel like it's got to be more than mine. Like the intensity I'm feeling.
Most certainly. Then if you feel that, most certainly that to be the case. Because I do think there's ways that you get to be like, oh, the past generations had to take it and shut the fuck up. And they had to protect everybody around them from letting their emotions get to a place that would make them a target. So I do feel like there's ways that you get to live in that rage and also transmute it to allow yourself to live this lifetime in a way that feels in the right energy, or you channel it in your art, in your characters, like you did with Graciela, thinking about what are the spaces that people deserve to be mad, like that Solange song, you got a lot to be mad about. Like we have a lot to be mad about. But it's also like that fire is magical because it warms, it cooks, and it also destroys, it also replenishes, it also transforms. So for me, it's you don't use fire the same way for everything. And that's how I think about these dimensions of myself, where it's okay, I might bring this energy for this situation, but with my daughter, I'm going to be like, okay, as much as there's a part of me that wants to boil over and blow up, I'm like, okay, does that belong to her? How does the heat live? Does the heat live like in a simmering kind of look to her? Whereas my parents, it'd be like, man, I got their rage from all kinds of shit.
So that's another thing too that I noticed about my parents that I'm so thankful for, that my parents never took their anger out on us. in some way, and I don't even think a lot of the things my parents did that they were good at, I don't think they necessarily were doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
Just their demeanor, their
yeah, they held a good line of like expressing frustration, all the layers, but they never took their anger out on us. Like so for some, I know that there's a difference between the two based on the
There
way
really
that
is. There really
the way
is.
that they did that, which is also what I'm hearing you explain around through this energetic expression of like, how am I using my energy and what are the ways in which I can express it to have a different impact? Is it a teaching moment? Is it a pause? What is the right gauge of how much energy? And so is that something how did you learn that? Or did you?
Meditation, for me personally.
Or that it was even necessary?
Also, because my parents, like as a kid, I'd be like, these niggas is crazy. Like my mom would just go off. Like I did not, like to me, I just felt like everything was handled by, they were just such fiery people in a way. And I think part of it is a whole bunch of reasons. I could psychoanalyze my parents for a day. But a lot of it was, I knew from a kid's age just how afraid I was of them. And how I also, in this other way, because I also ended up parenting my parents in certain ways and being a therapist for them in a lot of ways. Because there's ways that they were able to create a life for me, even with that rage, even with some of the chaos that I experienced, that gave me more access to healing than they had. And they also taught me a lot about healing. Like my parents are such deep people, like they're fascinating. And I feel like whenever we talk about our parents, it's like, how do we make them whole beings, even when we have to name the ways that they were challenging or harmful to our upbringing or whatever. But yeah, like I definitely felt like I just, and also too, I'm like a fawner as far as my trauma response. I either have fight or flight, freeze, and fawn. And the fawn is like, oh, like I'm always trying to calm people down, make people chill, which I think in some ways was a survival skill. And then it's also this thing where you can be so about finding and seeking harmony that you create drama. Some people are like, let's just chill. Sometimes you need to have all the feelings. And I think as a kid, I learned that I needed to keep my feelings whole because everybody was going to be doing some crazy shit. So I think there's a part of me that's, okay, now in this moment, how do I have rage and anger where it makes sense? So I think it could be both ways. You are tapped into rage, right? And maybe if we're looking at the elemental curiosity, right? Because I as an astrologer and a tarot, all me and my woo-woo, for me, I'm like, okay, the element of fire is needed, right? The element of water is needed. Air is needed. Earth is needed. And thinking, okay, I'm tapped into the emotions. Like someone walks in the room, I can gauge how they feel and really act accordingly to make things okay. And sometimes I wish I was more tapped into my rage, because to me, that's also a power.
There's so many things I want to ask you about this, but I want to keep us focused. I want to bring one of my grandmothers into the space right now, because there's so many things that I learned from her too about spirituality and passion. And I think that's also what I wanted to tap into with Vega, was that there's something almost spiritual in her presence, in her dreams, but then there's something about the passion to drive her to make the art that she's making with the level of detail that she does. And so for my grandmother, the grandmother I'm talking about is Ruby to the Heart, which is my dad's mom.
I love it in Ruby.
Ruby was a fiery, intense, emotional woman.
Do you know her birthday?
I don't remember it off the top of my head. I have to ask my dad. But Ruby, I mean, like, her love and intensity was wrapped around our whole family, every single one of her children and all of her grandchildren. My grandma's prayers are still carrying me today. I'm positive. We used to, like, when we would be getting ready, we would have these like family gatherings, and when it was time to go, my mama would be like, she would just walk around and say, go get your coat. Yeah, I know. Go get your coat. Because why? Because if Grandma Ruby realized that we was leaving, oh, they leaving? oh, we got to pray. Oh, everybody, the whole house. Like every single person in the house is gonna stand in the front foyer, or we're gonna wrap around it through the kitchen and hold hands. And she gonna pray for a good 10, 15 minutes, maybe if we lucky, 15. But then she gonna pray for every single person in the circle. So it was intense. And there was no telling her no. There was no walking out anyway. That level of fire and love around the family and that intensity is something that really seeped into me, that I feel is what kind of drives me in the care that I feel like I take as a collaborator creatively. But also she too, I remember being at my grandma's house, and I'm the youngest of three. So I'm like 6 and 8 years younger than my siblings. So there were moments where it was really just me. I almost was an only child at some points.
And that's totally
Through my
real
formative
thing.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just when you have that much of a distance, you are having that only child experience.
Yeah.
To some degree.
So being at my grandma's house, I heard her in the same way that you heard your grandma. Like my grandma she was literally just hanging out with God. They were just kicking it. Like they were literally homies. I was there. She would just be in her, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Like just having a full, just hanging out with God. Like that I heard that. I observed that level of, like, my grandmother to me seemed to be in an elevated spiritual space. That was her normal, to be wherever that upper room space, like her norm. And also the times that she would be in prayer and meditation. Prayer to me is meditation. It's receiving. It's becoming present to receive downloads. So she spent a good amount of time present in the elevated space and also in meditation to receive. Like she was always in that. So I got to bear witness to that. And I think that having those distal parts of her to observe played a lot into how I feel like I make art now, which, so my intention with Vega is to distill this moment of, some of us know a little bit what our gifts are, but it's scary when you realize your gift is bigger than you thought, or when you realize there's more than you thought there was, is what I was hoping to really encapsulate with this piece. And also just like this longing for some sort of connection with the artist that comes on the radio at the end, that like somebody gets you, like a longing for that, even when you're in this expanded space that you can't really be sure about. So I wonder if any of that resonates with you as well. I know the critical piece does, but just being in this space.
No, it's just great to hear you're sort of pulling these pieces together for yourself as a creative. Because I do think just how we opened up and just me asking you about where this character comes from. It's like it comes from so many places, and it's still be revealed to you still all the places it comes from.
Yeah.
I think earlier before we were on this, you and I were talking about the creative process and just, okay, how do we hold it? What feels right to be shared, to be explored, and all of the different spirits that are seeking to be expressed through us, ancestral, and just, I think for you in particular, there's a lineage of ancestors that are blood, but also like these, have you heard of the book Wayward Lives?
Yes.
Yeah, we will talk about that. But like this lineage of Black spirit that's I want to create, I want to express. I don't want to be tethered.
Sadia Hartman, we love you.
Sadia Hartman, we're obsessed. But yeah, so I think like just allowing these parts of us to channel through into the creative that we're blossoming, I think is dope. Yeah, like I see that in this work and in your process, and even you reflecting on these things around dreams and dreaming. And yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for having this conversation. And I do want to put a pin in a conversation for later, but I've been with some of the text that has inspired this piece, the whole piece, Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis, and also several essays by Audre Lorde in particular. One of them, Uses of Anger, Women Responding to Racism, and then the other one is it's a more pointed conversation or essay around Black women and our anger and our ability to build relationship together. It's an essay that's in Sister Outsider. I can't remember the name of it, but those are like, I want to have more conversation with you about those pieces. I wonder if you've read, and also that book, Wayward Lives. Yes, Beautiful Experiments is one of my inspirations for this piece too. Yeah, so we got to have you back on Wellcast to get to some other stuff. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being an artist and creating all the things you create.
It's so scary though. I'm not even gonna lie.
You couldn't do nothing else.
I can't.
That's how it be. If I could be an accountant, I would have been. I'm just saying, if there was a path more easy and more fun, financially stable.
I've had that thought many times. I've imagined myself since I've lived in Minnesota. I'm like, what would I be like if I worked at Target? I had that thought one time. I was actually in the Target offices for a performance. I was performing at their annual meeting. And it was the first time I'd ever been in a room with cubicles, not cubbies. I always make that mistake. With cubicles.
They're like cubbies though. Cubbies of people.
I was looking around. What would I be like if I worked in a place like this? And so it has obviously spawned another creative vision and story of who would I be? I'd be nutty. I'd be crazy. I'd be
That's how I was when I had every job.
Wild. I would be crazy. I would literally I'd have so many decorations that would change regularly in my cubicle. But it gives me insight that like people often, when you're in the wrong space, who you are is still going to come out. Mm-hmm. And so I imagine that me as a character creator, as a director, like I would probably do a lot of vindictive, strange things to generate a certain experience. I would direct the space and the people. It would still come out of me in the wrong medium because it's a part of who I am and how I'm designed. So that's like a story I've been like curious to write of like, who's this crazy? I'd probably be so driven. I'd be like so motivated and it would be crazy. And so that's always a curious thought of like, what would I be like if I would not be fun? I don't think I would.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of people who have jobs like that forever and then they're like, but I was always meant to be a painter. I was always like they find because I feel like jobs they're just capitalism and ways you got to fit yourself into making money. But I do be thinking about, what if I would have, because I do feel like I'm good at making money and being creative and strategic, but I always was so heart-led and community-led. And I was like, if I would have been a little bit more paper-led younger, because I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I think artistry often puts us in a position to either pursue the creative or the money. But then I was hanging out with my friend's son in New York and I'm like, oh, he's doing it about his paper and he's 19 and he's just navigating.
New York also cultivates that kind of.
And also the kind of family, like my friend is like an influencer that's like super connected and his dad is, So exactly. Like he was going to be that kid. Yeah. But I be learning, I'm learning from a 19-year-old. Like, how are you getting this money?
100%.
Because these kids be like, listen, I'm not waiting for the college debt to make my money.
No. Make your paper though, if you want to make your art too.
Especially if we making all this debt, we make my money. Whereas,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel like I would be, me not as a performer and artist would not be a happy person and I wouldn't be okay.
But I would create the drama in another way.
I would create I feel like I would create so much drama.
Yeah.
Like in a way that was probably ultimately, it just doesn't feel right. It wouldn't be a good version of me. Yeah. It would be intense because I would need it to be intense. And that wouldn't feel good to everybody who didn't realize that they were participating in that. Whereas
I cast you as a curmudgeonly boss. I cast you as the bitch secretary.
Right?
I cast you as the love interest.
Like, I didn't ask for this, man. Why are you treating me like this? I could just imagine that that would not be healthy ultimately. So I'm glad that
you found your calling.
I found my calling, but it's just, I just can't imagine what else I would be doing. So
and you're right where you need to be.
Hey, and on that note, all right, thank y'all so much for tuning into the Wellcast. We got more episodes coming up for y'all, so stay tuned and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Bye-bye.